Imagine a medieval war that changed the fate of Europe, where knights, political schemes, and epic battles intertwine like a thrilling TV series. Now let's dive into history together, from the fierce Battle of Grunwald to the rise of an empire that shook the world. If you're curious to uncover the secrets behind medieval politics and warfare, stick around until the end of the video, because these stories are more intense and real than any action movie. Germany's history is full of dozens of small, scattered states, but hidden within these war-torn lands was a secret, forgotten force that should never be underestimated: Prussia. A country that no longer exists on the map, yet in the pages of history, it roared like a storm and shook the foundations of Europe forever. Prussia rose from the mysterious ancient Baltic tribes, people who lived in the dark forests and swamps of what is now northern Poland, Russia's Kaliningrad, and Lithuania. They were the oldest inhabitants of the region, first mentioned by the Roman historian Tacitus under the name Estii, a name still shrouded in mystery. These wild and independent tribes lived freely without any central government. They were skilled hunters, hard-working farmers, and fishermen who built their economy around the valuable amber trade. Their wooden homes, hidden behind strong earthworks, were where everyday life met brutal battles for survival. Power rested in the hands of warrior chiefs, men who didn't command professional armies, but fought like ruthless hunters. Armed with spears and bows, they stood their ground against any threat. Their language was an obscure branch of the Baltic family, now buried in the dust of forgotten history. Their religion was filled with terrifying and mysterious gods: Patalo, god of death; Perkunas, god of thunder; and Patrimpo, ruler of the sea and fertility. They saw the Ramo forest as a sacred temple, a place where magic and reality intertwined. But the Prussians were constantly caught in the middle of brutal conflicts, surrounded by powerful neighbors like the Slavs, Germans, and Lithuanians. Bloody battles shook their lands, like the Battle of Natangia in the 8th century, which ended in a Prussian victory and gave rise to the trade center of Trousseau. But even that success was short-lived. The Vikings eventually reduced it to ruins. When the Poles and Russians attacked the region, rulers like Mieszko I and Vladimir the Great launched vicious military campaigns. Yet, despite their political weakness, the Prussians never surrendered. Through cunning trade, they got their hands on newer weapons and fought back. But everything changed in 1226, when Duke Conrad of Masovia invited a religious military order to wipe out the Prussians, the Teutonic Knights. Once guardians of Christian pilgrims, they had transformed into a force no one dared to challenge. Backed by a powerful decree from Emperor Frederick II, the Teutonic Order was granted full control over any lands they conquered, and thus began the conquest of Prussia. It took years of warfare, during which they built massive, nearly indestructible stone castles across strategic locations, laying the foundation for a new, fearsome empire in northern Europe. A land that vanished from maps became a power that rewrote European history and planted the seeds for the birth of modern Germany. Let me tell you about the old, legendary castles that marked the beginning of the Teutonic Order's dominance: fortresses like Thorn, Tarunya, and the mighty Marienburg, Malbork, which became the main bases of these powerful warrior monks. Prussia was home to tough, resilient people. They used guerrilla tactics, allied with the Lithuanians and Pomeranian rebels, and fought to their last breath. But by the mid-13th century, their resistance finally crumbled. There was even a major uprising led by Hercus Monti, a Prussian who had studied in German lands and tried to lead a strategic rebellion using everything he had learned. But against the ruthless might of the Teutonic Knights, he stood no chance, and the uprising was crushed. After that, the Prussians slowly converted to Christianity, and their lands were overtaken by German settlers. German and Polish cultures became dominant, and the original Prussians gradually faded into history. Still, the name Prussia lived on, a lasting echo of those wild, dramatic days. So who were these Teutonic Knights? They were sworn to poverty, chastity, and obedience, but on the battlefield, they were like a cold, calculated war machine. The order was led by a Grand Master, and aside from fighting, they ran the entire administrative and economic system of the conquered lands. These knights used advanced tactics and weaponry, launching aggressive campaigns that threatened Poland, Lithuania, and even Kievan Rus. By 1337, the last major Prussian resistance in Latvia was broken, and in 1348, the order defeated Lithuanian forces at the Battle of Streba, tightening its grip on northwest Prussia. The Grand Duchy of Lithuania, the last major pagan state in Europe, united with Poland in 1385. The Grand Duke converted to Catholicism and married the Queen of Poland, a powerful alliance meant to counter the Teutonic threat. But even that couldn't stop the order's ambition. Major cities like Gdansk, Kaliningrad, and Elbląg were built by German settlers, and the Teutonic Order rose to become a dominant force across the Baltic region. All of this led to the epic Great War of 1409 to 1411, a conflict sparked by uprisings in Samogitia, a hotly contested region between Lithuania and the Teutonic Knights. The climax? The Battle of Grunwald, on July 15, 1410, one of the most legendary battles in medieval Europe. Two massive armies faced off. The Polish-Lithuanian alliance, led by King Władysław II Jagiello and Grand Duke Vytautas, brought nearly 39,000 troops. The Teutonic Order, led by Ulrich von Juningen, fielded around 27,000 elite knights. If the Teutonic Knights had won, their dominance would have been secured. But for Poland and Lithuania, this was a fight for survival, and the outcome would shape the fate of Eastern Europe forever. Let's dive into the battle that shook Eastern Europe to its core, the Battle of Grunwald. It was the Teutonic Order's last big push to maintain dominance, and everything came to a head on July 15, 1410, near a small village in Poland called Grunwald. The Polish and Lithuanian forces had a clever plan. They hid in the surrounding forests, using the terrain to trap the Teutonic Knights and restrict their movement. Then came a dramatic moment straight out of a movie. Ulrich von Juningen, Grand Master of the Teutonic Order, sent two swords to King Jogaila, Władysław II, as a challenge. The battle began. The Lithuanian forces, led by Vytautas, struck from the right flank. But then, plot twist. Vytautas faked a retreat, luring the Teutonic Knights into a trap. Meanwhile, the Polish forces in the center and left were locked in brutal combat with the heavily armored Teutonic cavalry. Just when things were getting critical, Jogaila sent in his reserve troops from Ukraine and Tatar cavalry, a sudden strike that broke through the enemy line. In the chaos of a desperate counterattack, Ulrich von Juningen was killed. That shattered the morale of the Teutonic Knights. They fled the battlefield, and the Polish-Lithuanian army chased them all the way to Marienburg Castle. Grunwald wasn't just a battle, it was a turning point. The Teutonic Order's power was broken. The war officially ended with the Treaty of Thorn, where the Teutonic Order had to give up large parts of its territory and pay massive reparations. From there, it was all downhill for the order. During the 13 Years' War, Poland won again, and Prussia was split in two. The western part became part of Poland. The eastern part turned into the secular Duchy of Prussia. Then, in 1525, everything changed. Albert of Brandenburg, the last Grand Master of the Teutonic Order, abandoned the order, converted to Lutheranism, and formed the Duchy of Prussia, no longer a religious military state, but a secular one. Through smart political moves and marriages, the Hohenzollern dynasty took control, and from there, Prussia rose to become a major player in European history. Here's where it gets real: Prussia's vassal status? It was more show than substance. On paper, the Duchy of Prussia answered to the Holy Roman Empire, but let's be honest, the empire was a sprawling mess of loosely connected principalities. The emperor barely had control over most of them. And on the other side? The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was a noble-run elective monarchy full of internal politics, but somehow still functional. Surprisingly, this weird web of alliances didn't always lead to chaos. In fact, sometimes it worked out pretty well. But now, the game changes. Enter the stage, 1640. A new ruler takes charge, Frederick William of Hohenzollern, known as the Great Elector. This guy was no ordinary duke, he was a master strategist, a military reformer, and a genius when it came to administration. He built a modern, disciplined army, streamlined the bureaucracy, and played the Swedes and French like a chessboard. During the Polish-Swedish War, he sided with Sweden, which ironically led to the Swedes occupying his own Duchy of Prussia. But Frederick William had a plan. He pulled a political switcheroo, ditched Sweden, made a deal with Poland, and boom, in 1657, signed the Treaty of Walo-Bromberg. Prussia was now fully independent. From this moment on, Prussia wasn't just a duchy anymore, it was a rising state, a future titan of Europe. Fast forward a few decades. Frederick III, his son, saw all the other monarchs flaunting their crowns, and he wanted in. So, he helped the Habsburg Emperor Leopold I during the War of Spanish Succession. In return, the emperor gave him the green light. 1701, in the city of Königsberg, Frederick crowned himself king in Prussia. Boom! A new kingdom was born. This moment launched Prussia into the League of Europe's great powers. What started as a remote, semi-independent duchy had now become a kingdom with ambition, one that would, in the centuries to come, reshape the future of Europe and the world. Curious how Prussia went from here to building the German Empire? Or what role it played in Europe's biggest wars and political shakeups? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss the next epic chapters of European history. There's a lot more where that came from, stay tuned.